He has been called a visionary, a prophet, a genius.
Of all of the people that I have interviewed, you are the most difficult to define. You called yourself a random element. Other people have called you an experience.
An author, a designer, a scientist.
He's even a cosmogonist, which I neither know how to spell nor do I know what it is.
A New World thinker, if there ever was one, or Buckminster Fuller.
You have been called the greatest living genius. You have been called the Leonardo da Vinci of our time, the Benjamin Franklin of the space age, and you've also been called a crackpot. How would you describe yourself?
As a very average human being.
A forgotten 20th century genius conducted a lifelong experiment to show what one person could do alone to change the world. He led the beginning of a new scientific era and reminded the future that America is a haven for innovative thinking. He always had his sights fixed on the future, and a quarter century after his death, it is his future we now inhabit. Richard Buckminster Fuller Jr. was born in Milton, Massachusetts in 1895. In the same year, the X-ray was discovered. At the age of 3, the electron was found, and when he was 8, the Wright brothers flew. This taught Fuller to think outside the box. The impossibles were becoming possible every day. When he grew up, Fuller would be kicked out of Harvard twice. In 1917, he would join the Navy and marry Anne Hewlett. By 1920, he would go bankrupt in the building trade, and 1927 was the turning point of his life. He lost his first daughter to spinal meningitis.
He felt he was a mess, and the world would be better without him. He was about to commit suicide, and then he asked himself, what am I going to be throwing away if I do that? What are each of us? Each of us, he discovered, was a very extraordinary inventory of experiences.
As a man copes with liquor, Fuller coped with hard work. Filled with a vision that would fuel him for the rest of his life, he began with the radical reformulation of the house.
He ended up applying himself to housing because he thought it was one of the artifacts of human beings that had had the least development throughout history.
The unique hexagonal house would be supported with a central mast, which was a new housing concept and would accommodate 5 people. Houses during 1928 weighed around 80 tons, but this one weighed only 3. It was the perfect example of efficiency and modernism. He would later create the avant-garde term Dymaxion, which was a combination of dynamic, maximum, and tension to describe the new house and many of his future inventions. The 40 Dymaxion house proved that Bucky was a new visionary. Unfortunately, this design was too radical for the late 1920s and was turned down by the public. It was only one of Fuller's prominent failures. Moving away from the housing industry in 1933, Fuller took notice of the bungling and strident cars displayed by Henry Ford. His solution was the Dymaxion automobile.
By the time he designed his cars were pretty commonplace. You know, there's Fords everywhere. He came out with a car with 3 wheels. It would seat about a dozen people and get up to 120 miles an hour. And it was just radical.
The concept of mass production promoted low prices. During the Depression, this was why the car was highly popular with the public. But a car crash at the Chicago's World's Fair killed the test driver. This feared the public, and the car was never sold. It was another failure.
If it had been produced in quantity, cars today would be very drastically different than what they are. His 1933 car would still be considered extremely high performance and ecologically acceptable even by today's standards.
In 1944, Bucky would come back to housing inspired by galvanized steel bins. He saw how these bins could be altered to protect humans from rats, weather, and fire. The Dymaxion dwelling machine, with the help of Beech aircraft, had the potential to fix the housing shortage in America after World War II. Admired by the public, the circular house was built from low-maintenance aircraft aluminum, prefabricated for self-assembly, and only cost $6,500 per unit. 300,000 orders were made in the first few months.
It was a central pillar. It was made of aluminum. Most of the thing, a lot of the furniture items were all incorporated into the design of the house. He wanted an affordable house that would last a person forever. It was 100 years ahead of its time.
Unfortunately, like many other post-war housing attempts, Fuller's metal design was soon abandoned. The Wichita House is the conjunction of the only two made prototypes. It held the Graham family for over 20 years and is a lasting legacy of the efficiency and genius behind Buckminster Fuller. Despite the failure, Fuller continued to work meticulously. He would focus on synergetic geometry, which demonstrated the fundamental building principles of nature and the universe. With tense geopolitics, Fuller saw fault in the Mercator projection. His Dymaxion map displayed little to no distortions. It would help humanity address the world's problems and let politicians benefit from the world's resources. In conjunction with cartographer, Fuller would also become an author. Writing over 20 books, he was able to inspire a new form of economic thinking for emerging scientists. In 1947, Fuller was broke, evicted, and had a list of failures associated with his name. But he would discover something that would change the world and his career forever: the geodesic dome.
And out of the mechanical competence initiated in the power-borne airship comes the birth of our ability to convert our resources to serve not 30% of the population, but the whole of humanity. This is a geodesic dome.
A structural system influenced by the Dymaxion map, this design is famous for its lightness, stability, and resistance. It was a perfect example of doing more with less, and was an economical way to enclose space with minimum structure.
I always have the feeling that Bucky's appearance on this earth was meant to open the window to one thing. It was the dome.
The possibilities of this structure range from supporting military projects to ending poverty. It was a new futuristic design in American architecture. In little to no time, the geodesic dome would become world-renowned. Over 300,000 are built around the world. After working in synergetic geometry, Fuller continued to influence people through his lectures. Lecturing 400 to 500 times a year was a way for Fuller to spread his concepts and ideas for a universal understanding of Earth.
His lectures were extraordinarily powerful.
So what can one person accomplish during their lifetime to change the world? Buckminster Fuller conducted a 56-year experiment, spending the rest of his life inventing, writing, lecturing, and teaching till his own death, to prove how much one individual can do alone to make a difference. He obtained 47 honorary degrees, 28 patents, hundreds of awards, and wrote 28 books. He invented the word synergy and prospered in synergetic geometry. Bucky led with the vision of possibility and ideas grounded in theory. Fuller was a leader by failing. His story demonstrates that a leader isn't perfect. He challenged the world's architectural students to engage in a design revolution.
He felt all of us were capable of creating that kind of major and positive change for mankind and all society.
He was the first to voice the importance of global protection. In a time of global warming and with the oil crisis of 1973, he was able to surpass the common materialistic mindset and dreamt of an efficient, sustainable spaceship Earth. Inspired by the inventions of the radio, plane, and automobile, he sought out to think outside the box and transform humanity as these inventions did. Fuller left Spaceship Earth on July 1, 1983, and 32 years after his death, his ideas are still acquiring more recognition. From the eco-friendly housing to the green cars, Fuller's 20th century solutions are solving 21st century problems. His legacy spans from his geodesic dome to the Dymaxion chronophile, a documentation of his entire life. The World Game sparked interest in global economy for the young, and the Buckminster Fullerene is an example of how synergetic geometry is the fundamentals to nature. The Buckminster Fuller Institute in New York has also worked hard to retain Fuller's legacy. The Buckminster Fuller Challenge inspires scientists to follow in his footsteps and work towards a utopian world. Known as the Leonardo da Vinci of his time, the Benjamin Franklin of the space age, and as a self-proclaimed comprehensive anticipatory design scientist, Fuller impacted realms ranging from buildings to biology and beyond. His legacy spans from the environmental and sustainability movements to architecture and design. He was able to rise above war and depression to become one of the most influential figures of the 20th century. He showed that you don't have to be born handsome or born with muscles. You can achieve anything with the pure power of intellect.